Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Hey, podcasters. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm Andrea Klunder. I'm your podcast boss. And today we have a very special guest named Hannah DeBoer. And Hannah is here with me to do a little segment that we're calling podcast therapy, because who doesn't need a little podcast therapy sometimes? What do you think, Hannah?
I agree.
Hannah's coming to me from Los Angeles, California, where it's probably much nicer than it is here in Chicago, where I'm recording. But I wanted to invite Hannah on the show because she's probably one of the only people I know that listens to as many podcasts as I do. How many shows did you put in that little spreadsheet that you made?
Like 45. Yeah, I just love podcasts so much. It just kept piling on and on and on. And I keep getting more recommendations. I was talking to my sister the other day, and she was like, oh, you should check out this one. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And like, there's one she still wants me to download, but my app is being weird. But I just love hearing more and more of different ones to check out and stuff. And so I'm excited to even check out the newer ones as well. I listen to them like all the time.
It's so funny. I recently started using a podcast app called Castro. You can set how many hours of podcasts are downloaded to your phone and in your queue. So they have two queues in that app. One is it's downloaded onto my phone queue, and then one is it's in my library and I want to listen to it, but it's still like up in the cloud somewhere. It's not actually taking up space on my phone. So it's sort of like bookmarking episodes. But you can set a limit for how many hours of podcasts are downloaded to your phone. And at first I didn't know, so I just had it on the default. And I went to go add some episodes to my queue to play. And a little message popped up that said, you have 40 hours of downloads in your queue right now.
Whoa.
We will add more episodes when you have made more space in your queue.
No. Oh,
I was like, my app is shaming me for having too many podcasts to listen to.
Oh, no. Yeah, mine would probably be crazy because I listen to it like when I'm going to sleep or when I'm in the car or when I'm just like taking a shower or like just around the apartment. Oh my gosh, it'd probably be so full. Maybe that's why my phone is being wonky, all my podcasts.
For real, it probably is.
Oh man, but I love them.
I know. Well, that's why you got to use an app that prioritizes space for you and says, we're going to bookmark this for you. And then as soon as you've made space, we'll happily download it to your phone. But not until then. 40 hours is a lot of podcasts to listen to.
Oh, perfect. The podcast assistant.
Exactly.
I love it.
Hannah, why don't you... Okay, I could introduce you. I could say Hannah DeBoer is a dynamic, creative woman who is a novelist working on... Is this your first novel, technically?
I wrote a YA like through high school, and then this one was more of like a 20-something one that I've been writing on. So first or second, kind of around there.
So who is working on a new novel and has been working on it for a while? Because you know what? Novels take a while to write.
They do.
And she's also nanny by day, novelist by night.
Ooh. I like how you characterize me.
Right? There's all kinds of things you can imagine from that description.
Novelist by night.
So what else do our listeners need to know about you?
Writer, nanny, podcast lover, TV fangirl.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Ooh, chocolate chip cookie dough. Or anything with peanut butter. I love peanut butter too. Favorite color is white because it's clean and pure and it's pretty. You can draw on it and make it all colorful, but it's also like a good clean slate. Maybe because it's like has a lot of possibilities. I don't know. Now I'm going off on a tangent.
I like that. So... Podcast therapy is all about finding new podcasts, or at least new to us podcasts, to share with our listeners so that you can queue up 40 plus hours of podcasts in your app queue as well. Hannah, I believe that you have a podcast recommendation for us this week. What are you listening to?
Today, I wanted to talk about the Ask Me Another podcast. It is actually an NPR one, which is kind of funky because I grew up with like my mom listening to NPR and stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'd never listen to NPR. Like, oh, it's so boring and everything." But then now I actually like it. They have all these like different podcasts. Ask Me Another is an hour-long radio puzzle game show. It's hosted by the comedian Ophira Eisenberg and features in-house musician Jonathan Colton. And what they do is they have all these different kind of quizzes. So like each player has a buzzer and they ask these like random questions too. So they could be like on anything. And they'll ask how many, I don't know, just how many fish are in the sea or something. And you have to like guess how many it is. I just came up with that. But they also have guests come on. Like the one that came into my queue this morning was with Melissa Joan Hart, the woman who was Sabrina on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And I loved that show when it was on. So I was like, ooh, this is cool.
I think I didn't have cable back then. I think I wanted to watch that show, or I did when I was at my friend's house, but I actually didn't have cable, and so I could never watch it.
Oh no, it was good. It's cute. So, but this one, she talked about how she's also like nowadays working on a movie and she's kind of more on the producing end of things and stuff. But they've asked her like, what are you interested in or what are you an expert in? And she was an expert on like Shirley Temple. And so they asked her a whole quiz show based on Shirley Temple questions. It was cool. It was fun to kind of hear about. And she was really good. Usually they're really good at those quizzes because they like cater it toward what they know, which would be nice if every quiz show catered to what you know a lot about so you can't get them wrong. But it was fun, and they make jokes and they like interview the guests that they come on, and they have all different kind of guests. They go to different cities and they have like a live audience, so you get the live audience reactions. The person will be on stage and you hear all the audience behind like, oh, it's this answer, you know, or they could like ask, oh, what do you think it is? And they have like a spelling bee phase at the end. So like one of my favorite parts about this one is when they take a person from the audience and they have this like weird job, and Ophira and the person who does, I think the one who does the music, will then ask them yes or no questions and try to figure out what their weird job is.
What's the weirdest one that you can remember?
One woman. It was like she owned snakes or something, like a pet store. She knew all this about amphibians and animals and stuff. And she talked about like how you have to feed the mice to the snakes. And then Ophira at one point was like, no, I was talking about like them as a pet, not as the food. It's funny. It's also just to see how they like react to each other. So it's good like banter, good jokes, good people from all over, and entertaining.
Do you feel like you know a lot of answers when you play along from home?
No. But it's fun when I do. Like one time I was listening, it was after nannying, and when I was nannying for these 1-year-old girls, and we would watch this show called Baby Bum on TV. And
oh, yes.
It has Little Baby Bum, and it basically has cartoons of all these kid songs and like Twinkle Twinkle or Mary Had a Little Lamb or any one of those. And then I was listening to the podcast, and one of the questions, there's one song called like Wind the Bobbin Up, and there was like point to the ceiling, point to the floor, like one of those things. And I was like, oh, I know that one. But it's like the weirdest like connection.
Things you learn while nannying.
And the random facts, I tell you.
Do you hear that? That's the podcast angel music. That must mean I am going to tell you about some lovely podcast angels who help make this show possible, i.e., sponsors and affiliates. Today's podcast angel is CreativeLive. I am addicted to CreativeLive, and it's all my partner's fault. CreativeLive is this amazing website where you can learn all the things. They have live streaming classes on everything from budgeting and taxes for creatives to taking better portrait photos to how to make a podcast. So I am an affiliate of CreativeLive, which means that I tell you about them because I love them so much. And then when you buy classes from them, I get a little thank you. That's how an affiliate program works, and that is one way to get paid as a podcaster. So please check out CreativeLive. You will find my fancy schmancy affiliate link in the show notes for this episode in your podcast app and at podcastenvy.com. Please use my link. Seriously. So I have a podcast for us too that I just found this week, and it's called Everyone Else. Oh. It was on International Women's Day, and it was a roundup of this writer's favorite podcasts made by women.
Oh, cool.
This podcast is really unique. It's the only podcast that I feel the experience is significantly better if you also click to the podcast's website. So a lot of podcasters, I feel like, say, oh, go to visit me at podcastenvy.com or head over to the creativeimpostor.com. But there's not always really much incentive. Like, you can get all of the value of the episode just by listening.
Yeah.
And this one is actually described as an award-winning photographic podcast telling the stories of strangers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So when you go to the website, it's a super clean blog type format where you can just kind of scroll down. And each episode focuses on the story of an independent person. And there's no host. So it's just the person telling a story about their life.
That's so cool.
The description says, Everyone Else is a photographic podcast from Eva Krisayak. I don't know how to say her name. An audio producer from London who found herself chasing people in the street. The project looks to humanize strangers and make us more open to and curious about the people we do not know, those who look different or that are living lives much different from our own.
Oh my gosh, this sounds so cool.
And so she has like a team of photographers that when you are featured on the show, they'll record your story and then they'll send a photographer to come photograph you. They have a link that says take part. It says, it's simple. We come to you whenever and wherever is convenient. Eva records on a handheld device, so there's no need to come to a studio. Meanwhile, a photographer might arrange to snap you on your way to buy a bunch of bananas while you're walking your dog or lying on the sofa at home. It's not a complicated photo shoot, just 5 minutes somewhere that works for you. They pick one really awesome photo of the person whose story it is, and then just put the photo, a quote, one sentence description, and then the episode. It's so minimal and just really fascinating. The two episodes that I listened to, one was like a teenage girl in the UK, and she was just talking about how she wishes that adults would give them more credit, just kind of like thinking about things from a young person's perspective, which I picked that episode because of my program working with high school students to help them podcast. I'm always looking for podcast stories that are by young voices to help encourage them and show them what they can record and what they can do and what kinds of stories they can tell. And then the other episode was the opposite. It was like 100-year-old woman who was reflecting back to a time in the 1930s. Mm-hmm. The name of the episode is 100.
Oh, I see.
And it says, a woman of 100 recalls marching against Mosley, protesting poor social housing and the realities of life during war.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks really interesting.
Yeah, these photos are gorgeous.
And all the shots are different. It's not like one thing.
Because they're different photographers and they're shot in like outdoors or in somebody's house.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to hear this one.
So we have two very different shows to recommend for everyone this week. Diving deep into psychology and human stories with Everyone Else, and then having some good humor and entertainment and lightness with Ask Me Another.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's your podcast therapy for this week. Hannah, is there anything else that we should say to our listeners before we say goodbye for this episode?
Well, I'd love to hear from all you guys or see what podcasts you're listening to.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're on Instagram, maybe you can post a picture there. You can find me at HDeBoer05.
I always forget what this is called. If you put an @ symbol and you put somebody's name, so if you put @Andrea Klunder, like what is that called? You can.
You'd think it would be you can @ me, but people say you shouldn't say adding people. So
you can @ me, you can tag me.
Tag me, I'd say maybe tag me.
And you can also put the hashtags podcast therapy and podcast envy. I follow those hashtags. So podcast therapy, podcast envy, and I'll include our Instagrams also in the show notes for this episode, and take a screenshot of what you're listening to or a show that you want us to check out or you think our listeners would love to listen to. We want to hear what you're listening to.
Yeah.
And that's it for podcast therapy.
Woohoo.
Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Impostor Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.